The first sound was a lie, a voice, thick and sweet like honey, left too long in the sun, cooing my name. Sonia? Sonia, darling, can you hear me? My eyelids felt like lead curtains, but I managed to pry them open a slit. Blurry shapes resolved into a face I knew, or thought I knew. My mother, Edith. Her expression was a careful mask of concern, the kind actresses wear in daytime soaps. My name is Sonia, by the way. Or at least, it was. The person I was before the darkness swallowed me whole. Oh, thank heavens! Edith clasped her hands together, her voice rising an octave. She's awake! Ivan, Haley, come quickly, she's awake! Footsteps hurried, and then more faces swam into view. My father, Ivan, looking older, his eyes skittering away from mine as if I were the sun, and my sister, Haley, younger, prettier, and with a smirk playing on her lips that she barely bothered to hide. That smirk. It was the first truly clear thing I saw. Can you imagine? Waking up from God knows what, and that's the welcome you get? Sonia, sweetie, Edith continued, her hand fluttering to my forehead. It felt cold, clammy. You gave us such a fright, such a terrible accident. Accident. The word echoed in the fuzzy recesses of my brain. I tried to speak, but my throat was sandpaper. A nurse bustled in, checked a few things, and offered me a sip of water through a straw. It was nectar. Easy now, darling, Edith soothed, though her eyes were sharp, assessing. You've been through so much. The doctors, well, the care has been extensive, very extensive. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in, her gaze flicking to Ivan, then Haley, a silent, shared understanding passing between them that made my skin crawl. Your savings. It was a blessing you had them, Sonia. They covered everything, every last penny. But thank goodness it was enough. My savings. I'd worked my butt off since I was 16, building a small but successful online marketing business from my tiny apartment. I'd been careful, frugal, planning for the future. A future that apparently now included being penniless and lying in a hospital bed, listening to this woman I called mother spin her pretty lies. Ivan mumbled something that sounded like, "Just glad you're okay, kiddo," still avoiding my gaze. He wrung his hands, a habit he had when he was uncomfortable or knew he was in the wrong. He looked like a man carrying a boulder he was too weak to set down. Haley, however, just leaned against the doorframe, buffing her nails with an air of utter boredom. Yeah, Sonia, we were all like super worried. Her tone was as flat as a week-old soda. I noticed her handbag then, a sleek designer thing I'd seen in magazines, the kind that cost more than my first car. And the watch on her wrist, definitely new, gold, and sparkling under the harsh hospital lights. Dad was sporting a new timepiece too, a chunky, expensive-looking monstrosity that screamed midlife crisis or sudden windfall. Things they couldn't have afforded. Not unless a coldness sharper than any hospital chill seeped into my bones. It wasn't fear. It was rage, pure, undiluted, and terrifyingly clear. In that instant, watching them, their false sympathy, their new trinkets, something inside me snapped. Or rather, something clicked into place. I might have been physically weak, my body a broken mess, but my mind, oh, my mind was suddenly a razor. I'd already planned everything when I saw their smirks, even if I didn't know the details yet. The intent was there, burning bright. I let my eyelids droop again, feigning the grogginess they so clearly expected, perhaps even hoped for. I gave a weak nod. Tired, I rasped, the single word costing me more effort than it should have. Of course you are, poor thing, Edith cooed, patting my hand with fingers that felt like ice. You just rest. We'll take care of everything. Take care of everything. The words were a cruel joke. They already had, hadn't they? They thought I was finished, a broken doll they could pack away. They had no idea I was just beginning. Later, when the room was quiet and I was supposed to be deeply asleep, drifting in some post-coma haze, I heard them in the hallway. Their voices were hushed, conspiratorial, but the hospital corridor carried sound like a betrayal amplifier. "Do you think she bought it?" Haley's whisper, sharp and venomous, laced with a smugness that made my blood boil. "About the accounts being completely empty?" A low chuckle from Edith, a sound that should have been warm, but was utterly chilling. "Of course, dear. She's too weak to understand anything. Probably got a bit of brain damage from the fall. It's a blessing, really. Makes things simpler. Simpler. For them." My eyes, hidden beneath my lashes, narrowed. The coldness inside me solidified, turning from a chilling premonition into a block of Arctic ice. Oh, I understood. I understood perfectly. And they would too. Eventually. They would understand just how much I understood, how much I saw, how much I remembered. The game wasn't over. It hadn't even truly begun. And I, Sonia, the weak, brain-damaged burden, was about to learn the rules, rewrite them, and then I was going to win. You have to understand, when your own family looks at your near-dead body and sees a payday, something inside you changes forever. It forges you into something harder, something colder, something they will live to regret waking. Months bled into a miserable, cloying routine. I was recovering at my parents' house, a place that now felt less like home and more like a beautifully furnished prison. I played my part to perfection. The frail, slightly confused daughter, easily tired, slow to respond. "Oh, Sonia, bless her heart, she's trying," Edith would say to her gossiping friends over the phone, loud enough for me to hear from the living room sofa where I was usually parked, a pathetic prop in their charade. They'd bring me bland meals, pat my head, and speak to me in slow, deliberate tones, as if I were a particularly dim-witted toddler. "Sonia, dear, time for your nap," Haley would announce, barely looking up from her phone, her fingers flying across the screen, probably cataloging her latest shopping spree. Can you believe the audacity? Treating me like an infant while they paraded around in new clothes, drove a flashy new SUV, Ivan's pride and joy apparently, and hosted dinner parties where the laughter and clinking glasses felt like a personal insult. But the nights were mine, when the house was silent, when they were all asleep, dreaming their greedy dreams. I worked. My bedroom, once a teenage sanctuary, became my secret training ground. Using my tablet, one of the few personal items they hadn't bothered to manage for me, probably deeming me incapable of using it, I found physiotherapy exercises online. Simple stretches at first, then more complex movements. Every twinge of pain, every bead of sweat was a victory. I'd muffle my gasps into my pillow, pushing my broken body until it screamed, then pushing a little more. The rage was a potent fuel. During the day, when they thought I was napping or staring blankly at the television, I was making calls. Whispered conversations into a cheap burner phone I'd managed to order online and have delivered to a pickup point, feigning a sudden craving for a specific brand of ice cream to get Edith to drive me near it. My first and most important call was to Bryant, my oldest friend, a lawyer so sharp he could probably win a case against gravity. "For Sonia? Is that really you?" His voice, when he finally answered the unfamiliar number, was laced with disbelief, then a flood of relief. "It's me, Bryant," I whispered, huddled in the back of the pantry, the scent of stale spices thick in the air. "I need your help. Something terrible has happened." I laid it all out. The accident, the hospital, Edith's saccharine lies, the missing money, their sudden affluence. He listened in stunned silence, punctuated only by occasional sharp intakes of breath or a muttered curse. Those absolute vultures," he finally exploded, his voice tight with fury. Sonia, I am so sorry. Of course I'll help. Whatever it takes. We'll nail them to the wall. His immediate, unwavering loyalty was a balm to my raw, betrayed soul. He was the first person who saw me, the real me, not the broken shell my family pretended I was. Bryant got to work immediately. He was discreet, a ghost in the financial system, pulling records, tracing transactions. The initial findings he relayed to me in encrypted messages were devastating. It wasn't just that my savings accounts were empty. Oh no, they were far more ambitious than that. Sonia, he wrote, the words stark on the tiny screen of my burner phone. They didn't just spend your money. They forged your signature on loan applications, credit cards, personal lines of credit, even a second mortgage on, well, what was your apartment? They didn't just drain your accounts. They strategically drowned you in debt. We're talking hundreds of thousands. I read the message, sitting on the edge of my bed, the early morning light filtering through the curtains. Hundreds of thousands. They hadn't just stolen my past. They'd mortgaged my future, leaving me with a mountain of debt I'd never be able to repay if I stayed Sonia, the invalid. The cold fury I'd felt in the hospital solidified into something harder, more focused. This wasn't just about getting my money back anymore. This was about dismantling them piece by piece. A few days later, another message from Bryant arrived. I had to read it twice, the words blurring. Sonia, it's worse than we thought. They sold your apartment, and the buyer, it was a shell company. I've traced it. It links back to Haley's new boyfriend, some sleazebag named Blaze Dean. My apartment. My beautiful little sanctuary. The first place that had ever felt truly mine. Sold. And Haley, my own sister, was involved. The image of her smug face, her designer bag, flashed in my mind. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. It wasn't just greed. It was a calculated, cruel destruction of everything I had built. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my life. Well, they were about to find out that I wasn't going to give it up without a fight. A very, very big fight. The news about my apartment, about Haley's grubby little hands all over its sale, was the final push I needed. There was no more room for doubt, no lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, there was some misunderstanding. This was calculated. This was malicious. This was war. Bryant, I said, my voice low and steady during our next clandestine call, I need to disappear. Legally, I mean. I need a new identity, a new life, far away from them. I was thinking the same thing, Sonia, he replied, his tone all business. It's the only way you can rebuild without them breathing down your neck. Or worse, trying to stick you with more fraudulent debt. We can set you up with a clean slate. The plan was audacious, but surprisingly simple. We fabricated a need for specialized long-term care, a clinic in a distant, quiet city known for its cutting-edge and expensive neurological rehabilitation programs. A place my family, with their newfound but carefully managed wealth, could sadly no longer afford to send me to directly, but would graciously allow a distant charitable foundation Bryant discovered to handle. The conversation with Edith was a masterpiece of manipulation on my part. I played the confused, slightly hopeful invalid. A special place? For my head? I asked, my voice deliberately weak. Edith lapped it up, her eyes gleaming with something I now recognized as relief. Yes, darling. A wonderful clinic. They think they can help you much more than we can here. It's for the best. She patted my hand, her touch as insincere as ever. We'll miss you terribly, of course. Of course, Ivan echoed, looking anywhere but at me. Haley just shrugged, probably already mentally redecorating my room. The ease with which they agreed to ship me off, to essentially erase me from their daily lives, stung, but it also fueled the fire. Good. Let them think I was out of sight, out of mind. The move was arranged. I packed a small bag with the few belongings they hadn't pawned or misplaced. The farewell at the bus station, they couldn't even be bothered to drive me to the supposed clinic city, was a brief, awkward affair. Edith dabbed at her eyes with a pristine handkerchief. Ivan gave me a clumsy hug. Haley offered a wave that was more of a dismissal. "Call us when you get settled, sweetie," Edith said, her voice dripping with false concern. "I will," I promised, knowing it was a lie. The moment the bus pulled away, a wave of exhilaration washed over me. I was free, or at least on the path to it. Bryant had arranged for me to get off a few stops early, where a car was waiting. New city, new name, Sarah Jenkins, a quiet woman seeking a fresh start, and a small, clean apartment Bryant had secured. The first few months were brutal. Physical therapy was intense, pushing my body to its limits. Cognitive exercises, relearning things that once came easily. But every small victory, walking without a limp, remembering a complex password, holding a coherent conversation without faltering, was a step closer to my goal. And then there was the business. Bryant had managed to unearth a small, forgotten investment account I'd set up years ago, something so insignificant my family had completely overlooked it in their feeding frenzy. It wasn't much, but it was seed money. I spent my evenings, after the grueling therapy sessions, hunched over my laptop, researching, planning, building. I had an idea, a niche in the online retail space, something I knew I could make work. I needed a partner, someone with capital and connections I no longer possessed. Bryant, through his network, found Damien, an astute entrepreneur, a few years older than me, with a reputation for being sharp, fair, and a little bit ruthless in business, qualities I deeply admired. I pitched my idea to him anonymously at first, as Sarah Jenkins, a woman with a solid plan and a mysterious past. "Your proposal is compelling, Ms. Jenkins," Damien said during our first video call. He was all sharp angles and sharper intellect, his eyes missing nothing. "You clearly know your market, but you're a ghost. No online presence, no verifiable history." "My past is irrelevant," I stated, keeping my voice even, my face carefully neutral. "My projections are sound. The business plan is solid. Are you interested in making money, Mr. Evans, or in my biography?" A slow smile spread across his face. "I'm interested in making money, Miss Jenkins. Let's talk terms." And just like that, Phoenix Enterprises was born, my new company, built from the ashes of my old life. We started small, lean, but we grew fast. Damien was a brilliant partner, handling the public-facing aspects while I, as the silent, unseen strategist, pulled the strings from behind the curtain. Years passed, 3 of them. Phoenix Enterprises was no longer small. It was a force. I was wealthy again, more so than before, powerful, and all the while I kept tabs on my family. They still called occasionally, Edith's voice oozing that familiar false pity. "Oh, Sarah, dear, how are you managing? It must be so difficult for you all alone." "I'm managing," I'd reply, keeping my voice carefully flat. The image of my luxurious apartment, my thriving business, a stark contrast to the pathetic picture she painted. Then, one morning, an alert pinged on my encrypted phone. It was from the private investigator Bryant had hired years ago, a man tasked with keeping a discreet, continuous watch on the Romeros. Target company Romero Luxuries. Estimated 3 years ago. Primary funding source unclear. Suspected link to your previous assets. Facing first major financial scandal. Bad press. Supplier defaults. Stock tumbling. A slow, cold smile touched my lips. Romero Luxuries. The gaudy, ill-conceived venture they'd built with my stolen money. The bait was starting to work. They were as incompetent as they were greedy, but it was the PS on the investigator's report that made my blood run cold, then hot with a fresh wave of fury. Further deep dive into pre-coma financials and digital footprints for Edith. Found search history on her old laptop. Keywords: inducing temporary coma, drugs mimicking stroke symptoms, undetectable incapacitating agents. Search is dated 2 weeks prior to your accident, Sonia. This wasn't just opportunistic theft after you fell. This looks premeditated. Horribly so. Premeditated. My own mother. The air left my lungs. The rage I'd carried for 3 years intensified, sharpened to a diamond point. This changed everything. Again, the investigators' report about Edith's pre-accident searches. Let's just say it recalibrated my definition of revenge. Premeditated. She hadn't just seen an opportunity when I was helpless. She might have created that helplessness. The thought was a venomous serpent coiling in my gut. My meticulous plans for their financial ruin suddenly felt insufficient. But for now, I had to stick to the script. Their downfall was already in motion. From my gleaming office overlooking the city, a far cry from the cramped bedroom where I'd plotted my escape, I watched Romero Luxuries implode. It was almost comical, if it wasn't so deeply personal. They'd poured my stolen fortune into a company built on flash and ego, with no solid foundation. Edith, the supposed mastermind, was clearly out of her depth without my actual business acumen to exploit. Ivan, bless his spineless heart, was probably just trying to stay out of her way. And Haley? Haley was likely too busy spending the rapidly dwindling cash on more designer trinkets. Whispers in the financial world grew to shouts. "Romero Luxuries is toxic," one headline screamed. "A case study in mismanagement," another declared. They stumbled from one catastrophic investment to another, like toddlers playing with dynamite. It was a beautiful, slow-motion train wreck, and I had a front row seat. "There's a portfolio of boutique hotels coming onto the market," Damien announced one morning, striding into my office, tablet in hand. "Distressed assets. The current owners, some outfit called Romero Luxuries, are desperate to offload them before they go completely under." I kept my expression neutral, a mask of cool professionalism I'd perfected. "Are they a good investment for Phoenix, Damien?" He tapped the screen. "Potentially, if we can get them for the right price. They're bleeding money, but the properties themselves have potential. We could swoop in, restructure, make a killing." "Then make them an offer they can't refuse, Damien," I said, a chill satisfaction settling over me. "A low one. They sound desperate." He grinned. "My thoughts exactly, Sarah." He had no idea, of course. No idea that Sarah Jenkins was about to deliver another perfectly aimed blow to the architects of Sonia's ruin. Phoenix Enterprises, my creation, outbid a competitor at the last minute, securing the hotel portfolio for a song, further tightening the noose around Romero Luxuries. The next call from home was different. It was Haley. Her voice, usually so full of smug disdain, now had a brittle, desperate edge. "Sonia? Sarah? It's Haley." She stumbled over my new name, a clear indication of how little she actually thought of me or my supposed new life. "Haley," I replied, my voice deliberately flat, betraying nothing. "What a surprise." "Yeah, well, listen," she rushed her words. "Dad found some old papers, some shares or something, in your name, from way back. They're probably worthless, but there's this weird legal thing, and apparently your signature is needed to, like, dissolve them or something. Could you just sign them over to Dad? It would really help him out. He's been so stressed." Shares? I knew exactly what she was talking about. A tiny, almost forgotten holding in a tech startup I'd invested in years ago. Bryant, bless his meticulous soul, had discovered a recent obscure legal ruling that meant those worthless shares were suddenly, unexpectedly, quite valuable. A loophole I myself had subtly guided him to discover and ensure was flagged in a way that would eventually reach my family's desperate ears. They were fishing, and I'd baited the hook perfectly. "She shares?" I feigned confusion. I don't remember any shares, Haley. My memory, it's still not very good, you know. Oh, right, she said, impatience coloring her tone. Well, just sign where Dad tells you to, okay? It's no big deal. Just trying to tidy up old messes. I'll think about it, I said, letting a note of weary helplessness creep into my voice. Send me the papers. The greed, the sheer unadulterated gall of her, trying to swindle me again, even when they thought I was a brain-damaged invalid. It was almost impressive in its awfulness. A few days later, the phone rang again. This time, it was Ivan. His voice was thick with unshed tears, a quavering, pathetic sound. Sonia? Sarah? It's Dad. Hello, Ivan, I said, keeping my tone even. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, kiddo. His voice cracked. For things not being right. Mistakes were made. Big mistakes. My heart, hardened as it was, felt a flicker of something. Was this it? A genuine crack in their facade? A sliver of remorse? Before I could respond, before I could even process his fumbling apology, I heard Edith's sharp voice in the background. Yvonne! What do you think you're doing? Give me that phone. The line went dead. I stared at the silent phone. Genuine remorse? Or a calculated ploy? A desperate last-ditch attempt to appeal to a daughter they thought they still had some hold over? Knowing Edith, the latter was far more likely. But Ivan's words, they lingered. Mistakes were made. Oh, Ivan, you have no idea the magnitude of the mistakes, and you're all about to pay for every single one. The scent of blood was definitely in the water now, and the sharks were circling. My sharks. The silence after Ivan's aborted call was heavy, pregnant with unspoken desperation. Romero Luxuries wasn't just stumbling anymore. It was in a full-blown public death spiral. Creditors were no longer whispering. They were banging on the doors, figurative and, I suspected, literal. The boutique hotel portfolio, their last significant asset, was now firmly in the hands of Phoenix Enterprises, my company. They were hemorrhaging cash. Their reputation was in tatters, and every lifeline they grasped at seemed to fray and snap. I imagined the scenes in their house. Edith, her carefully constructed composure cracking, probably screeching orders and accusations. Ivan, wringing his hands, retreating further into his shell of ineffectual regret. And Haley? Haley would be panicking, watching her lavish lifestyle evaporate like mist in the morning sun. The thought brought a grim, cold satisfaction. They had built their gilded cage with my money, and now the bars were closing in on them. Then the email arrived. It was from Edith, a formal, groveling missive addressed to our dearest daughter, Sonia, Sarah. The switch back to my real name, even with the clumsy parenthetical, was telling. They were truly desperate. My beloved child, it began, the saccharine tone so thick I could almost taste it. Your father and I, and indeed your sister Haley, find ourselves in a rather challenging situation. Through a series of unfortunate misunderstandings and, frankly, some poor advice from those we trusted, our family business is facing temporary difficulties. Temporary difficulties, right? Like a gunshot wound is a temporary skin irritation. We were hoping, the email continued, that we might appeal to your kind heart, Sonia. We know you have always been the sensible one, the one with a good head on her shoulders, despite your recent struggles. We need to discuss a family matter of utmost importance, something that requires your unique perspective, and, perhaps, your assistance. The implication was clear. They wanted money, my money, again. Or rather, what they thought was still somehow accessible through the impaired Sonia. I leaned back in my leather chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. It was almost too perfect. The architects of my ruin, now begging for a lifeline from the victim they thought they'd destroyed. "Bryant," I said, forwarding him the email. "It seems the pigeons are coming home to roost, and they're asking for birdseed." His reply was swift. "Poetic. What's your play, Sonia?" "Oh, I think it's time for a family reunion," I typed back. "A very special one. Agree to the meeting, Bryant, but on my terms, my location." Bryant, bless his efficient heart, handled the arrangements. He informed Edith that Ms. Jenkins' charitable foundation, the one supposedly funding my long-term care, had a representative who might be willing to discuss their predicament. This representative, he explained, was very busy but could meet them at the corporate headquarters of a company the foundation had recently partnered with, a company called Phoenix Enterprises. The irony was delicious. A few days before the scheduled meeting, Bryant sent me another encrypted file. My stomach clenched as I opened it. This wasn't just about financial ruin anymore. This was about the depths of their depravity. "To Sonia," the message read, "I've been doing a deeper dive into Haley's digital footprint, specifically around the time of your hospitalization and the initial draining of your accounts. Found some old cloud archived emails between her and that boyfriend, Blaze, the one involved in your apartment sale." I scrolled down, my breath catching in my throat. There they were, screenshots of emails. Haley, in her own words, bragging to Blaze. Taram! And then I just added a few zeros to the specialist consultation fee. Mom and Dad are clueless. They just sign whatever I put in front of them. LOL. Sonia would never be smart enough to figure it out, even if she did wake up properly. It's like taking candy from a very dumb, very rich baby. Another one. Got another 10 grand siphoned from the physiotherapy fund today. Bought those amazing shoes we saw. You should see the look on Sonia's face when I wear them around the house. Like a confused puppy. It's hilarious. My hands were shaking. It wasn't just Edith and Ivan. Haley hadn't just been a gleeful bystander. She'd been an active, enthusiastic participant, skimming off the top, laughing at my expense, at my supposed helplessness. She'd been meticulously faking entries in my medical expense logs, stealing even more than her parents realized, all while mocking me. The cold rage I nurtured for years intensified, burning away any lingering wisps of pity I might have felt, even for Ivan. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine anymore. This was about justice, swift, brutal, and utterly comprehensive. Haley, with her cruel laughter and her stolen shoes, had just signed her own warrant. The meeting couldn't come soon enough. They thought they were coming to beg for help. They had no idea they were walking into their judgment. The days leading up to the meeting were a blur of focused activity. While my family was probably scrambling, trying to scrape together some semblance of dignity, I was preparing for war. Bryant was my general, meticulously assembling the arsenal. "The dossier is complete, Sonia," he confirmed via secure video call, holding up a thick binder. Bank statements, original and forged, loan documents with signature analysis, transaction histories of their lavish spending, cross-referenced with the dates funds were dispersed for your care. Testimonies from disgruntled ex-employees of Romero Luxuries, detailing mismanagement and fraud. Photos. Oh, the photos are particularly damning. Haley's Instagram feed was a goldmine. He smirked. And, of course, her delightful emails to Blaze. "Perfect, Bryant," I said, a calm, cold anticipation settling deep in my bones. The rage was still there, a simmering furnace, but it was controlled, channeled. "And Damien?" "Briefed, as requested," Bryant confirmed. "He knows Phoenix is on the verge of a hostile takeover of a failing company. He knows the current owners are problematic and that they'll be at the meeting today. He doesn't know the full family connection or your history, just that you want this handled cleanly and decisively." Damien had been curious, of course. "This Romero Luxuries takedown, Sarah," he'd said earlier that week, leaning against my office door frame. "It feels personal." more so than usual. I'd met his gaze, offering a small, enigmatic smile. Let's just say they represent a type of business practice I find particularly offensive, Damien, and Phoenix Enterprises is in a unique position to rectify the situation. He nodded slowly, accepting my non-answer. Understood. Just tell me what you need from me. His loyalty, his trust, even without knowing the full, sordid story, was something I valued immensely. The morning of the meeting, I chose my outfit with care. Not a power suit, not something overtly aggressive. Instead, a simple, elegant dress in a deep sapphire blue. Understated, confident. My hair, now long and healthy, was styled sleekly. My makeup was minimal. I wanted them to see me. Not the broken Sonia they remembered. Not the anonymous Sarah Jenkins they'd occasionally pitied over the phone. But the woman I had become. Strong, whole, and entirely in control. I arrived at the Phoenix Enterprises headquarters early, walking through the gleaming lobby, the quiet hum of productivity, a stark contrast to the chaos I knew was engulfing my family. My building, my company, built on the ashes of their betrayal, forged in the fire of my revenge. Bryant was waiting in the executive boardroom, the dossier placed precisely in the center of the polished mahogany table. The room was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. "They're due in 10 minutes, he said, his expression grim but resolute. "Are you ready for this, Sonia?" I took a deep breath, the scent of expensive coffee and success filling my lungs. "More than ready, Bryant. This has been years in the making." I watched from my office, connected via a discreet video feed as they arrived. Edith, Ivan, and Haley. They looked diminished. Edith's usually impeccable grooming was slightly frayed, her designer suit looking a size too big, or perhaps she had shrunk. Ivan was stooped, his face etched with worry lines that hadn't been there before. Haley, surprisingly, was trying for defiance, her chin held a little too high, her cheap-looking dress a pathetic attempt at her former glamour. They looked shabby, stressed, like shipwrecked sailors clinging to a piece of driftwood. An executive assistant, briefed by Bryant, met them in the lobby. "Mr. and Mrs. Romero? Ms. Romero? This way, please. The representative from the foundation is expecting you." They followed her, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and a desperate, grasping hope. They clearly expected to meet some benevolent, elderly philanthropist, someone they could charm or bully into bailing them out. They were ushered into the boardroom. I watched on the monitor as they took in the opulence, the sheer scale of the room. Their eyes darted around, searching for their supposed savior. The large chair at the head of the table was turned away from them, its back to the door, silhouetted against the bright city skyline. The assistant gestured towards it. "Please, have a seat. They will be with you momentarily." I waited until they were seated, fidgeting nervously. Edith smoothed her skirt. Ivan coughed. Haley tapped her foot impatiently. Then I cut the video feed to my office and walked down the corridor to the boardroom. I paused outside the door, took one final, steadying breath, and pushed it open. I walked towards the head of the table, my heels clicking softly on the polished floor. They watched me approach, confusion dawning on their faces. I reached the large leather chair, placed my hands on its back, and slowly, deliberately, turned it to face them. I let the silence stretch, enjoying the kaleidoscope of emotions that flickered across their faces. Confusion, disbelief, a dawning, horrified recognition. Finally, I smiled. A smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Hello, Mother, Father, Haley." My voice was calm, even, devoid of any tremor. Surprised to see me? The silence in the boardroom was absolute, thick enough to choke on. Edith's jaw literally dropped, her carefully applied lipstick suddenly garish against her paling skin. Ivan went a sickly shade of gray, his eyes wide and unblinking, like a startled rabbit. Haley, Haley's face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock, then something akin to defiance, though it wavered like a candle in a storm. "Oh, Sonia," Edith finally croaked, her voice a mere whisper. "But how? The clinic, your condition." "My condition?" I repeated, my voice still calm, a chilling counterpoint to their rising panic. "Oh, you mean the extensive medical care that conveniently drained all my accounts? Or perhaps the slight brain damage that made things so much simpler for you?" I let my words hang in the air, each one a tiny, poisoned dart. I gestured to the large screen on the wall. With a click of the remote in my hand, it sprang to life. Let me refresh your memory. The first image was a bank statement. My bank statement, showing a healthy balance. Then, a rapid succession of withdrawals, transfers, each one meticulously documented, leading to a zero balance. Next, loan applications, credit card agreements, all bearing my signature, forgeries so blatant even a child could spot them. Brian's signature analysis report flashed up, highlighting the inconsistencies. "You didn't just empty my accounts, did you?" I continued, my gaze sweeping over their stunned faces. "You buried me in debt. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, all in my name." Photos appeared on the screen. Them. On lavish holidays I'd never been invited to. Haley, preening in designer clothes, clutching expensive handbags. Ivan, beaming beside his new luxury SUV. Edith, dripping in jewelry at society events. Each photo was time-stamped, correlating perfectly with the dates my money and the fraudulent loans had been accessed. "While I was supposedly fighting for my life," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying to every corner of the room, "you were living it up, spending my life savings, and then some." Edith started to sputter. This is outrageous. A misunderstanding. We were managing your affairs, protecting your assets." "Protecting them?" I laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound. "By selling my apartment to Haley's boyfriend through a shell company?" Another click, and the deed of sale appeared, followed by the company registration documents, linking Blaze directly to Haley. Haley flinched as if struck. "And then, of course, there's Romero Luxuries," I went on, a new slide appearing, showing their company logo, followed by a cascade of negative press clippings and plummeting stock charts. "Built with my money, run into the ground by your greed and incompetence." Even started to weep, fat tears rolling down his cheeks, his shoulders shaking. "Sonia, Save it, Ivan," I cut him off, my voice like ice. "Your apologies are about 5 years too late, and about $1 million too short." Then I turned to Haley. Her face was a mixture of fear and a stubborn, lingering arrogance. "And you, Haley, my dear sister." The screen changed again, displaying her emails to Blaze, her gleeful confessions of fraud, her mockery of my condition. "Sonia would never be smart enough to figure it out. It's like taking candy from a very dumb, very rich baby." Her own words, writ large for all to see. The color drained completely from her face. She looked like she was going to be sick. "You weren't just a bystander, were you, Haley?" I asked, my voice soft, dangerous. "You were an active participant, stealing, laughing. You even enjoyed it." I let the weight of the evidence settle. The silence returned, heavier this time, filled with their dawning comprehension. "As you can see," I said finally, "my recovery has been complete, both physically and mentally. And while you were busy destroying my life, I was busy building a new one." I gestured around the opulent boardroom. "Welcome to Phoenix Enterprises, my company, built not just for success, but for this very moment, to be in the position to ensure you face the consequences of your actions." Edith looked around wildly, as if seeking an escape route. You can't do this. We're your family. Our family? I raised an eyebrow. Is that what you call what you did to me? You left me for dead, financially, and, as your search history suggests, mother, perhaps you even hoped, literally. The mention of her searches made Edith gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. Now, I said, my voice hardening, let's talk about my conditions for helping you out of this mess you've created. Bryant, on cue, stepped forward and placed a thick stack of documents in front of them. You will sign over all remaining assets of Romero Luxuries to an entity I control. You will also sign over any personal holdings of significant value. These assets will be used to compensate the actual victims of your mismanagement, your suppliers, your employees, and of course, to begin to cover the mountain of debt you fraudulently placed in my name. I paused. You will also issue full, public apologies. And Haley, I looked directly at her, due to this new evidence of aggravated fraud, I tapped the printouts of her emails. You will be facing additional legal charges. Bryant has already prepared the complaint. Their faces crumpled. The true extent of my planning, their utter, inescapable defeat, was finally dawning on them. They weren't just ruined, they were annihilated by the daughter they had so callously betrayed. I slid the documents across the polished table. The pen lay beside them. You have 1 hour to sign, or Bryant will be making a call to the district attorney with a much more comprehensive file than the one he's already prepared for Haley. Tick-tock. The pen lay on the table between them, a tiny silver arbiter of their fate. For a long moment, no one moved. Edith stared at the documents as if they were venomous snakes. Ivan just sobbed quietly, his head in his hands. Haley, surprisingly, was the first to break. "This isn't fair," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You set us up. You tricked us." I raised an eyebrow. "Tricked you, Haley? Did I trick you into forging my signature? Did I trick you into stealing from me, laughing about it with your boyfriend? Did I trick all of you into leaving me destitute while you lived like royalty on my dime? No, I don't think tricked is the right word. I think the word you're looking for is consequences." Edith finally found her voice, though it was hoarse, stripped of its usual manipulative charm. "Sonia, please, there must be another way. We can work something out." "The time for working something out was 5 years ago, Mother," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "When you stood by my hospital bed and lied to my face. When you decided my life was worth less than a new watch and a designer handbag. This is the something I worked out." I glanced at the clock on the wall. 55 minutes. Ivan lifted his head, his face blotchy and swollen. "We'll sign," he mumbled, reaching a trembling hand for the pen. Edith shot him a venomous look, but the fight had gone out of her. She knew. They all knew. They were utterly, comprehensively beaten. One by one, they signed. Edith's signature was a spidery scrawl. Ivan's barely legible through his tears. Haley's a defiant slash. Bryant witnessed each one, his expression impassive. When the last document was signed, he gathered them neatly. "I'll see to the legalities," he said, then nodded to me and left the room. Silence descended again, but this time it was the silence of utter defeat. They sat there, slumped in their expensive chairs, looking small and broken in the opulent boardroom. "You can go now," I said, my voice flat. "The assistant will show you out." They rose like automatons, their movements stiff and uncoordinated. As they shuffled toward the door, Edith paused, turning back to me, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of hatred and a dawning, horrified respect. You really became something, Sonia," she whispered. "Yes," I replied, meeting her gaze. "You made me." In the weeks that followed, the dismantling was swift and efficient. Romero Luxuries was absorbed into a subsidiary of Phoenix Enterprises, its legitimate debts settled. The remaining assets, including their house, cars, and any valuables they hadn't already pawned, were liquidated. A small fund was established to offer partial compensation to some of the smaller businesses they'd swindled in their brief, disastrous reign. It wasn't much, but it was something. Edith and Ivan ended up in a small rented apartment on the outskirts of the city. Their social circle, once so eager to bask in their reflected stolen glory, evaporated overnight. The shame was a constant companion. I heard through Bryant that Ivan spent most of his days staring out the window, while Edith was apparently learning to live without a housekeeper. Haley's arrest was a minor local scandal. The evidence, especially her emails, was irrefutable. Her trial was short. She was found guilty of aggravated fraud and received a sentence that involved community service and a hefty restitution order she'd likely be paying off for the rest of her life. The designer bags were gone, replaced by an orange vest and a trash picker. I didn't attend the trial. I didn't need to. I watched it all from a distance, not with glee exactly. Glee felt too celebratory. What I felt was a profound, quiet sense of justice served. The burning rage that had fueled me for so long had finally subsided, leaving behind a strange sort of emptiness, but also a calm. The scars were still there, a permanent reminder of their betrayal, but they no longer ached with the same intensity. Damien, now fully aware of the entire sordid saga, Bryant had filled him in, with my permission, was a rock. He didn't offer platitudes or judgment, just quiet support. "You did what you had to do, Sarah," he said one evening as we looked out over the city from my office. He still called me Sarah sometimes, a habit I found strangely comforting. They made their bed. They did, I agreed, and I just made sure they had to lie in it. I had my life back, my wealth, my power, my name. Though I still use Sarah Jenkins for most business dealings, Sonia felt like a private victory. The empire I had built, initially as a weapon of revenge, now stood as a testament to my resilience, my strength. It was a powerful tool, and I realized, looking out at the glittering city lights, that its purpose could be more than just settling old scores. They took everything from me, so I took everything from them, and in the end, I was the one left standing. Karma, as they say, can be meticulously planned, and sometimes it's served not hot, not cold, but exactly as it was earned. My revenge was complete, and I was finally free.